G'day, guys. Josh here. Welcome to the Joshin-Strike Podcast. We got Hoackz, the CEO of Vantage. Are you the CEO of Vantage or are you the owner of Vantage? Oh, you know what we forgot to do?
Bit of both.
We leaked one of the topics out early.
Oh no, what have you done? You've ruined everything.
Oh, man. Leakers, man. CS leaks too. Got me again, mate. But, you know, are you the owner or CEO of Vantage?
Well, the way it's structured, I'm technically both. One of the directors here, CEO, and the majority owner of Vantage and Hoackz Holdings. So yeah, consider me both.
How is Vantage set up? Because obviously we talked to Jason about it last time, and he said he learned a lot about setting up esports. Like, you know, talk about trust structures and stuff like that. How's Vantage set up? Like, is it just an ABN and go, or is it just company trust, or what?
Yeah, so you've got the company, which is Hoackz Holdings.
Yep.
Then you've got business name registered through us. They've also got another few ABNs here and there.
Yep.
Through some of the other directors who run some other little side projects that we do.
Yep.
That's kind of the way we fund the organization, that kind of thing. So yeah, pretty much.
What sort of side projects do you guys do? Because obviously DXA had the educational esports stuff. What do you guys do?
It's not really anything tailored towards esports specifically or this kind of thing. So we do e-commerce. We also do some digital management, that side of things. Digital upskilling, consulting as well for some different businesses. I've stepped away from that side of things. It runs itself now with one of the other directors. So that makes it a lot easier. I just stepped into a new industry myself and picked up a full-time job. I just had so much time on my hands. So I was like, why not maximize my income? So
So what sort of what sort of industry do you like get into initially? Like is it teaching e-commerce, or what industry did you go in before you left it? And what are you in now?
So initially, after doing uni, school and that kind of thing, straight into technology. So I was, funnily enough, being account executive at Telstra for a fair while, pretty much walked straight into that. And managing uni. So kind of really got stuck into that. It's a revolving door almost in terms of how long you can stay there and really excel. And then, was able to leverage a lot of time that I don't have now into being able to build out e-commerce and learning more about that kind of thing. And then scaling that up, got pretty lucky after a few projects failed, and then was able to support myself through that for a little while. And then brought in some of my friends, some smart people, strategic thinkers, and then pivoted back again into esports. And then wasn't as demanding as originally I would thought it would be. So then I was able to go straight into insurance, which is where I'm at now.
What sort of insurance do you do? Is it risk or general?
General insurance.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, is he gonna be in the BDM role for risk insurers, which I deal with a lot as a financial advisor, or general?
No, general insurance.
You with, like, what sort of general insurer are you with, or is it just keep it hush hush?
I'm pretty open about it. No, I'm with UE because they're based on the Central Coast. So it's nice and easy. So it's where I am on the Central Coast here. So it's a nice spot to be in, that's for sure. But yeah, great company to work for, great people. Me coming into the industry fresh. I think great learning opportunity, and they're scaling really well. So yeah, just welcoming every opportunity that comes through that.
So, like, what sort of degree do you get in university? You get, like, technology degree. What led you from going out of Telstra and then going to becoming into the general insurance industry? It's a bit of a you go from one white collar job to basically, essentially, I'd say, a salesy sort of job.
Well, Telstra was centered around sales. That was my role. In a capacity where it was already existing customers. Retention component. And I'd work within a portfolio of them. Sales in terms of insurance, I was just doing small business general insurance packages through that. Now I've actually taken on a new role where I'm just looking at process mapping and analytics for the business. So different thing again. So I'm stepping out of sales completely. I think that's really where I can bring the most value to them,
Mhm.
and also learn some really good skills that I can apply into the way that we run things as Vantage here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what sort of skills have you brought in from like all the industries that you've done, like the sales you started at Telstra, then at UE? Like, how you brought that to esports in particular? Because a lot of people, they tend to forget that you can't just love esports to get into esports. You have to bring a skill. Like, what sort of skills has it brought you?
Yeah, so it's funnily enough, like originally why I think I got so attracted to it was when I was playing so much sport myself. I
Mhm.
played a lot of basketball, a lot of AFL,
Yep.
and was pretty good at it. So when had an opportunity to almost get into esports and get into CS, which is something that I've loved for so long,
Mhm.
I brought a lot of skills from that particularly and drew on a lot of that with
Mhm.
building and structuring a team, how I
Mhm.
want them to play, bringing them into the environment.
Yep.
And then as times went on, I've been able to reflect a lot on my professional career and seen, hey, I'm working amongst a team, I'm working
Mhm.
in a different setting almost away from sports. I'm able to do a lot of training specific to
Yep.
things you don't really think about, like delivering unfavorable outcomes.
Mhm.
Um, how do we communicate with one another? What's effective communication look like?
Yeah.
Um, different structure. So it's a real eye-opening experience from a
Mhm.
lot of perspectives, to be honest.
Yeah, with the sports in general, like what happened with the sports? Like, get to a pro level like Script did and get get hurt by injuries or cursed by injuries, or is it just like, nah, just do it for fun, basically?
I think I just was like, where is I got to a crossroads where I was, picking
Mhm.
up injuries and that kind of thing as well, but um, it would never stopped me from wanting to play. I still had the desire, but it was
Mhm.
like I was hitting a point where can I maximize my earning capacity,
Yep.
and that was just being working full time
Mhm.
and going hard at that and going hard at sales.
Got any famous stories from like the AFL or basketball? Like, you played against anyone famous or anything like that? Because we had Script on here. He bowled to Virat Kohli, got tonked around a lot. What about you?
Um, well, I do have. I don't know if anyone knows, but there's a guy who plays for Richmond, Noah Cumberland. I grew up with.
Yep.
So yeah, we played a lot of AFL. Played with
Mm-hmm.
him. A few guys from Brisbane who I played with as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly against though.
Yep.
Throughout school level, club level,
Yep.
state level, representing Queensland. So yeah, some great bunch of guys
Mm-hmm.
through there. But no one absolutely insane that I've really played with. It's a bit different if you're from here rather than maybe Victoria or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's gonna say overall. So with the e-commerce side, like, what's so different about e-commerce? Because every time I hear about e-commerce, I think it's like drop shipping and stuff like that. What's the difference between e-commerce and commerce in general, like businesses like being online and then being offline? Obviously, I'm gonna say, I know it's not all drop shipping, but
Yeah.
it is just
Well, a main component, yeah, a main component of it is it has a lot of subdivisions in the way that you can do things. Like exploring a couple options now, like with Amazon FBA,
mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing, which some people have great success in, but it's really finding a niche within that,
Mm-hmm.
finding opportunities. But e-commerce in general, and you do say general commerce, all
Yeah.
it is bringing that platform online and connecting with the customers online. That is the only difference you're making in terms
Mm-hmm.
of business model. It's how do we
Yeah.
instead of bringing a customer to your door or client to something you wanted to show them,
Mm-hmm.
it's really just bringing to a website, drawing their attention online, and yeah, making transaction.
Yeah. So what sort of goal are you trying to head with Vantage at the moment? Like, are you trying to make Vantage a tournament winning team? Or are you trying to make Vantage in sort of like a marketing vehicle like Endpoint does, for example?
I think it's a combination of both. We just want to be able to scale ourselves that's sustainable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing is sustainability to make sure that we're here for the long run,
Mm-hmm.
which I think we've done really well so far. In terms of our investment strategy
Mm-hmm.
into the team and scaling that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the main driver that we want to really focus on is bringing in outside sources of investment,
Mm-hmm.
through different sponsors and that kind of thing. However, we attract them possible. If
Yeah.
that goes into expanding into other titles because there is more opportunity there
Mm-hmm.
and there's low cost acquisition for teams, that's something that we're happy to explore. With Esports World Cup coming
Yep.
in, you look at the money that's on the table there. If you get
Mm-hmm.
there's skilled players in many titles that you can pick up and
Yep.
take a long way for
Mm-hmm.
minimal cost. It's just maximizing your opportunities as they come, really. But CS is going to be core of everything we do. Everything that we do is here to fuel CS. That's our main goal.
Any other esports that you guys wanted to get into, or you looking at, or rumored to get or want to get into?
Look, there's been some assessment done by some of our guys and what's the most viable. Like there's like some of those fighter games that like I'm not expert in. Yeah, so I'm no expert in it at all. So I'm probably not the best person to speak about it. But I've had some consultations with different people, and realized that there is actually like a real market out there, and it's a really committed fan base. So there's definitely some potential for that. More FPS, hopefully. Not Valorant. We don't do Valorant. Something that I've always been against.
Why do you not do Valorant for? Like, what's the main core reason behind it?
I just don't like the game. I don't want to put my money into something I don't believe in.
Okay.
Like personally, that's literally the only reason. It just has no interest to me, and I feel like it's not fair that I have a team that's under the brand and wouldn't be getting the same support if it was a game that I enjoyed. It's just not fair on the players.
Is it like, what's the main reason? Like, why you don't find it interesting or enjoy it particularly? Is it because the pathway to build up, or is it just the game doesn't look enjoyable?
Yeah, when you look at the model and the entry point for a game like Val, like there's obviously some tournaments that are localized, and you can still get a good showing from there, but it's really hard market to break into as a new team. I think also fan base and that kind of thing, it's not really my crowd. I know there's obviously people out there that have differing opinions and just enjoy the game for what it is. But for me, I just think it's a bit slow, it's not quite my tempo.
Yeah, because I feel like it's a bit of a younger audience in particular, because they got a lot of people from Overwatch heading over to that Valorant scene in particular.
Yeah.
But is Overwatch something you guys are interested in as well? Like, is it at the type of game, Valorant being, agent-based shooter, is the issue? Like, would you avoid going to Deadlock and Overwatch for the same reason?
Look, Deadlock will just have to be explored as more gets announced. I think, being Valve, as much as everyone, complains and moans and gets upset, they do have strategy in mind and what they want to do with it. Like you look at Dota, for example, and you look at CS, how good they perform internationally, and scale up to a tournament level. So I'm sure there will be something in the works for them, or in the pipeline at least. So we'll just take it as it comes. If there's an opportunity there that is reasonable for us to pick up a team, obviously we'll definitely explore it. We're not going to shut any doors. But yeah, it's definitely going to be some opportunities there that we'll assess as time goes on.
Now, with the CS2 team in particular, like, how's that going, like, progress-wise? How do you think it's going, like, from a standpoint, like a neutral standpoint? Like, is it going well? Needs a bit of improvement here or there? What's your status on it?
Yeah, it's definitely a question that needs to be raised. I think it's not unknown for us. It's not public knowledge for us to know how much adversity we've had to go through over the last few months trying to restructure, and we want to give people opportunities as much as we can. Like the Overcello exit, you look at the Vision exit. We want people to move on and be in the best opportunities that they can be at that point in time. Obviously, we want to present the best opportunities, but we're not always able to do that at that current point in time. Hence those situations. But due to that fact as well, there's been some real setbacks in our development. You look at ECL especially, right? It is now a massive uphill climb for us to really just force our way out of a relegation zone, which is something that we really didn't think about going into the season at all. So yeah, it's definitely needs improvement. I think we internally have discussed a lot of really great things. We've put together some really great pieces of content. Going into different things, resetting expectations for each other, onboarding new players, and getting them up to speed. But yeah, I'm really excited about the roster we have at the moment. I think everyone's just great to be around. I think our vibe and our culture is really good. But yeah, just got to keep showing up and doing the right things.
How do you deal with that sort of thing in particular, where basically, not to mention you turned over an IGL during that time, which was Skull Hunter, then you lose two of your rifles just as the season starts. How hard was it to just keep everything together at that stage?
I'm very grateful that we do have a culture where people do have a sense of belief in the leadership, and that we do have a plan and we are going to stick to it,
Mm.
which is really really great. And I have to give credit to Night Raid especially. He's been like my go-to for the whole time, and I trust him with making a lot of in-game decisions and what we need to be doing, because he knows a lot more about the game than I ever will, and that's just a simple fact. So yeah, I leave a lot of those decisions up to him and consulting me on those. And yeah, I think we work really well together in our belief that we can keep continuing to work hard and do great things with the team.
Given that you got Jinx and oh my god, I can't believe Alec. Okay, the Fortnite duo from Archon. Do you think you could, maybe pry away Crunchy from Troopers as well? Try to get the Archon boys in the team.
If I didn't say if I said Crunchy didn't come up in conversations when we were assessing our needs, especially with Omochella's exit, because the roles are so similar, I'd be lying. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great player. I've spoken to him a little bit myself. But yeah, I'm grateful that he has a really good opportunity there at True Rippers as well. So hats off to him for making that happen. And he even had to go back to playing Valorant for a little while, and take a seat on the bench and sidelines. So hats off to him for making something work for himself.
Trying to think of. So I gotta say, with CS2 overall for Vantage, you guys have an academy team as well. What's your main goal of that in particular? Like, the academy team is just give 5 players a chance to build up, or like, what's your main aim?
Yeah, I think it's really upskilling the grassroots environment. I think it's a little bit daunting for so many different teams trying to start. You look at Open from a level. A lot of it, like, you have to admit, a lot of it is just teams that don't really have any structure, don't really have any guidance. So getting as many players as we can who are keen and developed in that ecosystem is only going to improve the talent pool that OCE has as a whole. And I think we'd be a great success story if we did see some of our players from the academy team get picked up by ECL teams if they break into our team, even better. But yeah, just having that talent pool to pull from as well is the ultimate goal, and just providing more opportunities to play professionally or be exposed to a professional level as possible.
Do you feel like the AE Open in particular is just a mixture of like semi-pro and amateur teams? Like, there's the amateur basketball teams. Of course, you've probably done this at basketball, where you just have the Wednesday night crowd, and then you have the guys trying to aspire to get to ECL. Do you feel it's just a mix of that?
Yeah, it's a great question to be raised. And I think that missing that opportunity to actually have a mid-tier tournament going around is a massive blow for us, because you look at dropping, like, if you look at relegations for ECO, right, you're going back into that pool in ECO Open, and it's just a massive gap in terms of level. I think having a second division being like an intermediate or something like that would be the way to go in terms of developing our region, just to have a little bit of a buffer between teams that are just fresh starting with little to no experience to teams that have been playing for a few seasons together, do have a few playoff wins under their belt and that kind of thing, and being able to test themselves against the upper half of the community.
Yeah. Obviously, with the new Valve rules coming in next year in particular, do you think that will impact anything with ECL or Open in particular, or the chance of getting that mid-tier league? Or different tournament operators in general in AU?
I don't think there's any real possibility of there being another TO come and take in the market share that like ESEA currently has in terms of what they've got at the moment. I think their product's pretty good, and people are willing to invest money into buying subscriptions and showing up every week to perform in those. So yeah, I don't really see any risks from there, but I think we'll just have to keep raising the question to ESEA in particular about them adding a second division. A third division. So it's just definitely something that we just need to keep on the boiler for them, really, to be honest. Because if we let it drop, it'll just won't come back.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, like, anything about LPL and AZC potentially launching their own league or anything like that? Like, is that something you're keeping an eye out on? What?
Yeah, like I've been in some conversations with different stakeholders around opportunities like that arising. I can't speak on behalf of them on what their plans are, but there is definitely things going to be set in motion that I think won't really impact the current environment too much, but it'll provide more opportunities for people to compete, which is great.
Yeah, what sort of tournaments would you like? Is it more of another league system, or just the one-off cups that everyone can just go in and then, it's like the FA Cup and the League Cup in the background during the English Premier League season? Like, what sort of structure?
Yeah, for sure. I think if it was like, if we're talking about an ECL kind of level league, I definitely prefer shorter tournaments. Maybe two weekend tournaments would be optimal. You have one weekend where you have maybe a qualifier or something like that. You have second weekend, which is like a playoffs kind of thing. That would be optimal, I think, for that kind of level. But I think if you're going down to having an open kind of level tournament, I think it's better to have it structured like a league. Obviously, you're able to market a little bit better. You're able to get pump more experience into the players and that kind of thing. Because if you talk about tournament and these teams, they really just need more time to develop. So I think that if you put, and you see it every time there's qualifiers for an event, right? You have like some really keen teams show up and then they get drawn against an ECL team straight away. And then they're out. You didn't even play a full game, or you played
a half, and that's it.
A half basically, right? Like you got 12-0'd or something like that, and then you 13-0'd or 13-1'd. And it's just not a very good experience for them. So I'd like to see something, a league format, where they're able to really find their feet in matches and have a real chance to compete.
So this is a different question overall, because this was brought up by Ben in particular with the RMR scheduling. So obviously Ben said that, if you can't get, I think it's 4 p.m. off, that you weren't going to make it far anyway. Do you expect that out of your players? Because obviously Vantage had a forfeit due to being unable to form a roster. Look, is that comment valid, or how do you really deal with it in particular? Like, how did it go to Vantage?
It's tough, right? Yeah, it's tough. I think that, I think I even said it in my tweet that I put out, just letting everyone know the situation a little bit more. It's pretty poor, and it's a lack of understanding of the community. Because I obviously haven't engaged with the right people in the community at all, or if anyone, about what is acceptable for this kind of region. Because you think about 4 p.m. and what we were like, can't expect people to get, if they're like, as we said, a lot of people work at those times. Can't expect people to take time off for a maybe and the loss of income for them if they're like a casual employee or something like that. Like, think about us, for example, right? If we lost to KZG and people have already booked tomorrow off for nothing, pretty much, and they're out of pocket, $150, $200 because they didn't get to work that day. It's not very fair. And then you have, if we do make it and they haven't booked time off, that's a weird conversation to have with their employer, or a tough conversation to have with their employer, trying to excuse themselves for the day at such late notice. I just don't think it's viable. I don't think it's fair. And it may be just because they don't understand like the work environment either, not even just the CS community environment, what the expectations are from Australian employers, and how that can really rub people up the wrong way. In particular, for me, like I didn't obviously have any negativity towards anyone on my team who wasn't able to make it, because it wasn't actually work. It was more so university, and it was an exam. So there's not much we can really do about that, because those exams are there to be, and they're scheduled in much longer before we knew we were going to play close qualifiers or even make the second day of close qualifiers.
Exactly.
Obviously, we're always hopeful that we do, but there's no guarantees, and it's not worth the trade-off if someone isn't able to make an exam or something like that for university.
Did you like I said, did you send any emails to Perfect World about rescheduling it? Because yeah, I know I did. I know a few others did. You know, essentially, what is the problem of moving it 2 hours? You know, again to
Yeah,
6.
I didn't get a response, but I did send did send one, and I did speak to the admins quite intensively about trying to arrange for different options. And I know they've got like a schedule to run off and that kind of thing, which I can understand.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really feel like there should be some more lenience in accommodation, um, maybe just around that. And I feel like it was maybe a little bit of a lack of transparency from the get go, because we all knew from when the open qualifiers got released what times they were trying to schedule things at, and we all kind of threw our
Yeah.
toys out the cot. But then they had a chance to really either justify it or change it before the close calls, but they didn't. So here we are. We missed out. Like, I'm not going to say, like, yeah, I probably will say we missed out on an opportunity that we could have gone a little bit further and maybe had some other good games and more experience. But yeah, such is life, I guess. You can't control everything.
Yeah, I was going to say overall, because, there's a few conversations. Like I said, the Challenger mode admins overall were very, very good at advocating for our case because they were hired by Perfect World. And I got a response for Perfect World, and that was just basically we've delayed it by 2 hours, and that's it. I think overall, I think a lot of major tournament organizers in general need to really realize that Australia is a region that is not amateur or semi-professional. It's semi-professional and amateur. Like, no one is professional other than one team. Or two teams now, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it really tough.
Anyways, I've got to say, we'll go to our first topic. Because obviously I think we've gone 30 minutes of interviewing you. It's been actually really, really fun learning more about you in particular. And
so you're welcome.
What Vantage really wants to aim for in particular, obviously trying to win a few tournaments here and there, but also build itself as a sustainable brand so you don't be in, the 1-win tournament and then bam, you're gone kind of thing.
Yeah. You don't want to have those situations at all.
Yep. So going to the first topic. So the first topic is the interesting one, okay? It's obviously about ESIC. So let's set the stage for everyone, okay? So recently, ESIC's third year of being silent on the NA match fixing stuff. And some of it's pretty obvious on who did it, and some of them are still playing Valorant and CS to this day. So that article came out from Jeff MMZ. I can't pronounce his name because I just struggle. Okay, but he said
I thought it was like my name is or something.
Maybe, okay, maybe, and Jeff's probably like, finally, he fucking got it.
Yeah.
But so he reported that, and then basically what happened was with Parivision. So Parivision were disqualified because they released a YouTube video with Finn talking in the background. And obviously, if you guys don't know, Finn is a banned coach from the coach bug with the POV, the London bug as everyone calls it, the coach camera bug. And he was meant to be banned for 3 majors, which is to be the third major basically as well. And what happened after that was that they organized this last chance qualifier with Bleed, Koi, I forget the third team, Monty, I think it was. And then a day later, ESIC come out and announced that Finn's ban's been rescinded and that they didn't tell Perfect World or anyone else, and everyone got really pissed off because, why didn't you say anything so we could avoid this mess in the first place? And this isn't the first time that ESIC have completely dropped the ball. We have the Hunden kind of thing where Hunden just lawyered up and suddenly his band's gone kind of thing. Can ESIC be saved or salvaged? Because it seems like it does. It seems like a paper tiger. It can be scary to people who have fucking nothing, like Australia, for example, where they treated us like absolute criminals, where the penalties were barely anything. And then they go to NA and anything that can fight back, and suddenly they're, just dropping everything, basically.
Yeah, there's a reason why they call the US the land of the lawsuit. Because I think that's where they get a little bit hung up in terms of where they put liability on people and hold them accountable for actions compared to comparatively to what we've experienced here in Australia over the last few years. But yeah, it's really disappointing to see really the way that they conduct themselves so often, in where there's not, they want to be some regulatory body, but they're not regulating appropriately, and it's not to cast a dark light on anyone, but there's definitely got to be some people held accountable at ESIC for this kind of situation that's arisen.
Because I can say overall, like ESIC, it can be definitely salvaged in particular. Like it's just showing more consistency on the decisions and whatnot. And I think it was a bit harsh. It does some good things. Like they got Goku Shima out of the scene. They've got a few people out of the scene in various different esports. But I think the main reason why I think it can be salvaged is like you got to have some integrity body. I mean, I guess you could also argue as well at the same time that a bad integrity body is worse off for the game. Like, you can argue, for example, you had CISPA being the other CS2 body, integrity body CISPA, which basically in the end started becoming a player agent for some of these Stralis players, which was a bit like, bro, what? And also the lack of support from CISPA to the AU scene when, half the players were banned and they didn't get the evidence presented to them until the bans expired, or some of them like that. Like, some people never got evidence given to them. According to some people, they could be, they could have missed the email, whatever. But what do you think about ESIC overall, like as an entity? And if they can be
as
salvaged?
An entity, as an entity, I don't think just do the right thing. It kind of like stays away. It's like, you're driving past a cop car or something like that. If you're just doing the normal things, you go about your day. You don't have to worry about it too much. But that's from our perspective. Like, we're always trying to be in line with any regulatory standards. But yeah, I think from their organizational perspective, I think they definitely need to look at themselves and reflect a lot. And being an integrity commission, have some integrity yourself and have some continuity among decision holders, and be able to be upfront and transparent with the way that you're handing out bans and all this kind of stuff.
I think they are, like, in a lot of bans and stuff like that, and like what they've banned for. It's just the biggest issue that they have in particular is that when anyone puts up a fight, they immediately fold. That's pretty much it. And you can't kind of do that as an integrity commission. It's just like, it's kind of like protesting in a way when people talk about this big game and then they accept money from Esports World Cup. And it's just like, you have to kind of do things when it's inconvenient for you. Like, if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to get your goal, because you're going to fold over and fall over the moment that one sense of adversity gets to you. It's kind of pointless to have a body in the first place. Like, the purpose you have an integrity organization is that if crap hits the fan, you're going in there to protect the integrity. Not that, if it's convenient, I'll protect the integrity of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you raise the question about, where are they answering to, and where do their interests lie, because they've obviously got some bias towards different things. And as you said, when it conveniences them, if it's in their best interests, they'll act accordingly. And if it's not, they'll act in an inverse reaction.
Yep.
Which is obviously something that we can't have, and we need to raise and try and develop to solve. Yeah.
I think the biggest one in particular is the biggest one that point out to me is the Hunden. I have no idea how Hunden got away with a lesser ban than a lot of AU players did from their gambling things. In particular, I suggested the email to the commissioner that any AU player's got a 1-year ban, you suspend. Anyone's got a 2-year ban, you keep 2-year ban or above, you keep on, because it's an integrity breaking game. Because a lot of the 1 years were betting on other games, not betting on your own game. Anyone who had 2 years or more were betting on your own game. And suspend those guys 2 years, because that's integrity breaching. The other ones could be guys didn't have any idea. Okay? Because a lot of people in the AU scene's very young. So I'm like, if they do it again, you put the year on.
Yeah, at that time, it was a very premature cohort engaging in those activities, which, hopefully they've all learned their lesson these days and have grown up a little bit. But yeah, I definitely think exactly on the money there.
Yeah, because also as well, like in particular, like, obviously there was the Willie Chaos, who I think got 5 years, and actually he should take those 5 years, because you can't aggressively bet against your own team and suspect to stay in the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also the NA stuff. Like, the NA stuff is probably the straw that breaks the straw that breaks the camel's back for me, because you've got a lot of people making a lot of money in Riot, okay, with Valorant, who left CS after they couldn't get an org to go to Riot, and now they're playing for like FaZe and whatnot. And it was clear as day that something was wrong there. And all these players who are now in CS2 have to deal with the fallout and all that crap like that, and they're just watching these players make fuck tons of money for the last 3 years, and they get nothing done for it. I mean, I think Swisher just basically said it all one stage in one of his tweets, where he's just like, I just can't, like, how?
Yeah, it's got to be something like, if you compromise integrity in one aspect of esports or one component of esports, you have to think that they would do it somewhere else. You know, or at least have something carry over. It's not like you get charged with a crime here, you move to another country, and it just doesn't exist anymore. Most definitely does. So, you know, obviously screening and that kind of thing. But, you know, when they enter the scene and when they enroll for these events, you think that these other titles are doing those checks and that kind of things beforehand, not dismissing them.
Yeah. I'd say overall as well, like a lot of people have said, in particularly when ESIC get into a partnership with a betting organization, and a lot of people would be like, oh, why are you getting into bet of those? I don't see that as a bad thing in particular, because those are the organizations that are going to give you the data to indicate if anything bad has happened there. Now, I'm not going to say every betting organization is obviously a great company. Obviously, there's some that are regulated by, I forget the country's name, like Kodaco or something like that, or whatever it is, where it's just like, yeah, bro, like you got your,
I think it's Quantico or something.
Kodaco, you got your gambling license out of a fucking cereal box.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, like, there's like orgs, like obviously you got your sports bet, stuff like that as well, which are officially licensed and regulated, have actual KYC, and not one, you know, KYC when it inconveniences them, such as losing money. Like, if they go with them, I'm fine, because I'm just like, yeah, they're reputable betting organizations. You know, they can give data to them when they need it. Let's say, for example, that they think a game is fixed. They can go and check the betting signals. If they see a big rise in one team, they can get all the people who bet on it. Easy peasy, done. That's why it's a lot easier in Australia, is because if you want to go for someone on match fixing, the betting organizations have to give it to you. But in a sort of way for ESIC, for overseas betting particularly, I feel like it's a good thing. And a lot of people dunked on them for it. And I'm sitting here going like, no, this is exactly what they should be doing. You want to get into bed with anyone involved in the scene, whether it's the person who's betting on the sport or the betting agency themselves. So I think it can be saved, obviously, with the key betting partners, you know, chipping in. And they've already got a few partnerships as well. And also with some of the game devs as well, with Riot and a few others. Like, you know, they've already built that foundation where it can be sort of salvaged. Because if you scrape together and try to get something new, then you're going to try to get all the other betting agencies on board, which is just going to be pulling teeth, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think, once again, spot on there. I think having them involved in those deliberations and being able to provide data and feedback is necessary for them to conduct their activities appropriately and make sure they're operating in the right way. You know, as you said, you just have to make friends with the devil almost, you know, to get the right outcomes and serve the right purpose there.
Because, like, at the end of the day, in particular, like, there's another thing that people have suggested with this in particular, is that the betting agency influences ESIC in particular. Like, basically trying to get certain people unbanned. Someone pointed this out with the Paravision case, given that Paravision is sponsored by Parry March, which is a Russian, I'm not sure, actually, I need to get this one right, but it is a betting agency. I'm just going to say, I don't, like, you know, you can't attribute everything that's a mistake due to malice. I think this was of incompetence by ESIC, that they didn't announce their decisions. And I don't know, like, all they had to do to avoid this mess was just say, this guy's unbanned, he had an appeal, and that's it. Like, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think in our conversation we had earlier as well, just having some sort of public-facing database that actually shows this kind of these kind of things when they expire, when they're coming up. There is some form of it, but it's
on Wikipedia at the moment.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've checked it out a few times, but like, how up to date is that? Who's monitoring that? I think it should be in-house. You know, for ESIC, they should be responsible for their own regulation, the way that they impose those bans. So I definitely think that they need to do some assessment and, you know, and formulate something like that.
And that's nothing to like Eminences, Martin as well, because I talked to him a bit. Razar, who does HLTV as well, because they're all together in Wikipedia. That's no offense to them. They do an amazing fucking job. It's just
Definitely.
it's
Yeah.
just ESIC need to do it on their closed end because like they've done a really good job there in particular. Trying to think about anything with ESIC in particular. I think ESIC's unprofessionalism with handling the AU scene was pretty out there. Like I think overall it was just seemed like a lack of process in particular because they banned players but wouldn't give them evidence on why. And it's just like, well, like you got to show them what you banned them on because they could actually be like, no, I'm not in that team. I haven't been in that team for ages. Even though my name's there, I haven't played with them and stuff like that. That's what one of the bans were. Where I think it was Jamie OCE. He was on the team's bench, but hadn't played for like 6 months, and he still took a 2-year ban, even though he doesn't play it at all. He didn't care about it. He was just like, I don't play anymore.
Yeah, I think like at that point in time, it's almost like they didn't know what they needed to do. I think you're exactly right. Like lack of process. They were almost doing it for like the first time, and they're just fumbling through it and didn't know what actually needs to be done to conduct those actions and condone those behaviors appropriately. Because obviously there was some bad actors, but bring forward the evidence. We need to be able to see it and make sure people are dealt with appropriately.
Yeah, obviously with the evidence in particular, you only bring forward to the parties involved. You don't bring it forward to everyone. I hate when everyone goes, like, even though I do ask, and I only expect it to be DM'd to me in particular, like, what is the evidence? Okay? And that's, of course, that's for them to DM me and be like, yeah, sure, here's the evidence. This guy said, this is with a bad language thing. This guy said the N-word. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, I'm fine with that. But it's just like, transparency. Only do it to the parties involved. If you want to do it to a journalist, if they ask a question, like, say, let's say Note, for example, or Striker from HLTV ask, you give them the reasons why, and then they can publish it basically as well. I think it's just like a lack of experience with an ESIC at that time to give those things across.
Definitely. I think, it's a lack of foresight in their processes. But even like when it comes to those circumstances as well, you don't have to give the most specific answer. You can just be pretty vague. You can say, hey, said this, or he's done this action. You don't have to go into specific things. And I think that just silences the audience a little bit and, puts it at bay. You don't need everyone to know the ins and outs of it, but just have some vague understanding of what happened is acceptable.
Yeah, I think Riot and LPL do really, really well in this. Like,
definitely.
In particular, like for Valorant, like they've been, this person violated this, bang, out, that's it. And they don't even give you the evidence. They're just like, this person did this. I asked for evidence. I didn't get it. I'm just like, okay, that's fine. But they were very clear and precise on what they broke, how long, and that's it.
Exactly. And I think relating it back to like the rule book or whatever that might be in terms of the breach, just that's enough because then we can understand exactly what the scenario was without going into.
Yep. And also I gotta say, like, the big thing for ESIC, like if I want to reform and salvage ESIC, is definitely process first. Get some few friends in the media. Because I'm going to say right now, Note, and then there's Striker, all of the journos, like even say Taffy as well, all they want is integrity in the game. Okay, they want the game to be fair for everyone, stuff like that as well. They align on your interests 100%. Like that's why Note's Richard Lewis. Sorry, I forget the two biggest ones, like Richard Lewis Forward. They want the game to be fair. Okay, they don't want the game to be unfair. I mean, Richard didn't break I by Power because he wanted to be famous. He wanted to make sure that people like this get fucking punished and it doesn't ruin their scene as he yells in the screen. Kind of like I'm doing now.
He has his own manner in the way he conducts, he conveys his points, but it works for him. And I think exactly right. And what we all want the same kind of outcomes. Especially for us as an org as well. We want to make sure that we have a fair and stable environment that's sustainable for us to grow in.
Yeah, and also like some process as well, because then both parties understand, both parties accept. It's very easy to do. And also the most important part, especially as a judicial body, is consistency and being to go out back to precedent. Because if you're making decisions ad hoc in particular and not give reasons for it, like as in like reasons why or go to the rule book or what's spirit of the game or whatever, it just makes your body sound like a joke. And it's like kind of like the AFL tribunal for a fucking example.
I was about to actually mention that. I was literally about to say the same thing. Because all the controversies of that as of late, even
you can't have
clubs going to court with the tribunal and that kind of thing. So that's gone out the window as well. So that's another
Yeah.
instance of how it's been
Mm.
almost misinterpreted by so many different people.
And that's pretty much it. That's all few things that they're hard at first to get into place, and hard to get back to stuff with the community. But you got to do it bit by bit. You got to accept where you are and then go for it. And then once you've done that, people start trusting you again and be like, hey, they've got a process. Hey, they actually put out to a rulebook. Oh wow, like crap, like these guys actually mean business. And like, let's say for example, they take on a few big things. Like, oh wow, they're taking on a lot of big cases overall. Like people take notice very quickly, and then more sooner than later, you're gonna have journos coming to you guys being like, hey, what's the take on this and stuff like that, and building stories out of it. I think this is what ESIC's missing. And once ESIC, understand that they can't be in it for themselves, kind of thing, you have to kind of work with people. They'll be a great organization, and they won't be put to the wayside like kind of CISPA is, where CISPA's just seen as a joke, where it's just basically a soapbox for tier 1 players.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they didn't do themselves any favor by their comment on Jeff's post either, trying to relinquish accountability. They just need to own their own actions and own their own decision-making processes.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll go to the next one, which is going to be the EU side in particular. So obviously with EU Counter-Strike is Counter-Strike, well, it's not EU Counter-Strike, is CS2 becoming more EU-centric? Because what's been happening is that obviously Mac has moved over to EU to further his own career in CS, because I'm going to be brutally honest, in Australia, you get very limited opportunities unless you're out at midnight at night. And we've seen Mac, Pilsky, and I believe, I'm not sure, I'm trying to think of the third person that was up at midnight with Mac and Pilsky. Was it Jim? Was it Elvish? I'm not sure. But they used to do the NA and EU cast back in the day from the studio, which was absolutely crazy. So obviously they don't want to do it again. But Mac has gone to EU. Also, we've had teams pick up EU players such as Sepify and Talon. Do you think this is going to be more of a consistent route in the future?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think the people who are pioneering it at the moment are doing a great thing for the wider community. I think being able to expose what we do have here and offer it to the to EU in particular is going to be great for the scene in general. If that's from a talent perspective, if that's you look at Simplify now, actually being able to lure some new talent over here, talent as well with MHL. I think that's something that we really need to keep developing, and having a relationship and having a definitive pathway. Think of it almost like the NBA, right? Like now got a definitive pathway for Australians to get to the US to play in the NBA. We all know that the NBA is the best place to play basketball. We all know that EU is the best place to play CS. It's really just cultivating that and making it a flourishing opportunity where it's a, it's a structured pathway that many people can follow.
It's like kind of like the G League and NBA as well. Like, I think it's a secondary league. It's right. It's like, I think it's AHL's hockey as well. And then you got the AFL state level. Like, you got all these little pathways. As long as there's a pathway to Europe for the Australians, it's great. And also, it's good to see a lot of the Asian investment as well from talent being in Hong Kong. And Simplify as well have a Latvian investment as well, because I think I got this one out of Ben as well, that I put into the group as well as his poker group. And I think it's really good to see international investing coming to Australia and then them being able to go to Europe in particular. Now, the downside of it in particular is that what you sacrifice by going into Europe, like, of course, you don't get to see family and friends and personal stuff like this. I did highlight it last time when I was talking about, the price of being professional. Is that if you want to go out there, you're going to have to leave your home. And I was watching Mac's Twitter feed and videos about it in particular, where did they leave Pico behind or did Mac take Pico? I forget, but either way,
I'm not too sure. It was a little bit confusing for me, unfortunately. I tried to read into it all, but I couldn't quite piece it all.
Yeah. But overall, stuff like that where Mac, is had not as fine. I don't want to be dramatically his final dinner with his family kind of thing, because of course it's going to come back eventually. But it's kind of thing like that Sponge went through as well, because he doesn't get to see his family much in WA either.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think overall, I think this is going to become more of the norm, even though it's, like I say, could be bad for AU, could mean that they lose their league status and that you're just a farm region for EU, kind of like what happens with League, where the LCO is just a farm league for America. And that's what I get worried about in particular, of why, focus in one area, is that basically anywhere that's not Europe, if you're not in Europe, you don't get anything. Okay, you have to move to Europe to even have a chance at it. It's not that if you're good here, you can go to EU. It'll turn into, if you want to have a chance at it, you have to move to Europe immediately.
Yeah, I think there should be some, a combination of both, where we do have a strong scene here where we're able to have those teams sitting at that level where they're able to actually, as you said today to Drox, be able to go boot camp in
Yeah.
there and get exposure to that. Having teams not just at the top 3 level, but have like a top 10 almost at that level where they're able to go and get that funding and go and do those kind of things, get the exposure, come back and still have a thriving scene here. And then obviously there's still going to be like different teams, rising and falling, and having more experience and more time in the region. But I think it needs to be a collective upskill from OCE and a real shared vision on how we actually want to develop that. So I think, it ties into some of the things that some of the orgs that I've been talking to regularly that we're putting into place, which is really good already, because we know this is kind of coming and kind of defrosting a bit from esports winter, where we're going to see, as you said, we see some more investment from overseas. Look at Housebets as well, team that is getting that as well. So I think that's really going to open up some more opportunities for a professional pathway and long-term careers in esports in Australia.
Yeah, I think for me overall, with like the fear that I've got in particular, is that in particular where just you have to go to Europe to be good in that esport. There's no real league in Australia in particular, and this is actually a big fault for Riot in particular as well. What they did, the franchise league, is that they've made getting into PCS, for example, really difficult for the AU region when you're jumping through different tournaments, and like these minor regions are slowly being shaded out, and they're just having Asia, America, and EU, because that's the most money making, and all the other regions get left out. That's what I'm kind of afraid of in the AE region as well. Now I know the AE region of CS has open circuits, so it's got a whole different sort of thing. But the things you can argue against it as well, because, well, actually one thing I've got to point out is that, do you feel like the teams that can afford EU players are going to have a big advantage over the teams that can't?
Yeah, there'll definitely be advantages to that. Always, like if you bring in better players and better talent, you're typically going to get better outcomes. And I think we've seen that with Talon, taking on Rooster last night and making the RMR. Obviously they've got some great players, from our region, but brought in some extra firepower internationally. But yeah, it's really helping facilitate that as well. And as you know, as teams get experience in Europe and they come back, we scrim them, that experience gets shared. We kind of understand a little bit more about how they're playing the game over the side of the world. We pick up new things, new intricacies. So I think eventually the region will get accustomed to it and be able to grow from it. And there'll be less of a skill gap between the two regions the more we get exposed to it. So I think more we're able to be able to facilitate having EU players come over and being able to be part of our ecosystem, the better outcomes we're going to get for just our talent here.
Yep. Because one thing in particular as well, like EU players, I don't think an EU player it sometimes makes a better team. I mean, Rooster put up a very good fight against Talon. I feel like that's Slimy just really clicking for the team and really put up a good fight.
Yeah.
Like Talon were pretty much having to put everything into it because they were getting railed by Rooster at some stages. I can say, like, with what's the other thing about AU in particular? Like, I feel like there's something AU can contribute to the scene. The other thing as well, like, I think M80 really pioneered this by getting the first few EU players in, which I believe was Manx and always mix up Sirius and Slacks, but Slacks as well. Yeah, I gotta say, like, overall, I think this is, I think I agree with you in particular. It is working out. And also, as well, it's just, as I said, my greatest fear is still if EU becomes a place to be and CS2 is just in Europe, especially with what's happening in NA, where half the NA experience have left over to Valorant, and it's becoming a battle between those two things. And if CS2 doesn't win there, then you just got Europe, and you've already lost Asia to Valorant, obviously, because Riot owns basically half of it. But yeah, I feel like overall, like, CS2's got a big issue in particular because it's going to become EUcentric, where everyone has to be in Europe, otherwise you don't get a fair shake at the sauce bottle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, talking about that, you look at the the hunger and the market that's currently in America, where there's so much Valorant and that kind of thing, where that's just the right dominance over there.
And they barely play any fucking games. Like that's the worst.
Exactly
Valorant.
right.
They play no games.
It's not a good outcome for fans and spectators, unfortunately, because it's just less live events, there's less grassroots opportunity. It's just that model. Unfortunately, I don't really like it. It's pretty much why I said before in our interview that I didn't really want to be a part of it, and I don't think it's part of Vantage's future. But I definitely think that we have a role as the community to make sure we keep fan engagement up, make sure we are working on initiatives to bring more people in, draw more eyes on the actual game itself, and create an engaging ecosystem where people want to be, where kids who are playing the game want to develop into professional players as well.
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, in particular, with the open circuit of 2025, will that impact anything to do with with the EUcentric future? We've got PGL announcing that they're going to have tournaments in Belgrade, Buenos Aires, and various other different areas in the ecosystem. Let me just check that. There are a few different tournaments.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact ones off the top of my head.
Yeah, so let me just try to find. And they also acquired a Sportal as well, but that's beyond the thing. I know that did Buenos Aires, so obviously some in South America and whatnot. And I think there's going to be some in America, I believe, as well. Let me just get a few, you guys. So Astana, Bucharest, obviously in Belgrade, Serbia. And also I think they've got Sao Paulo and Barcelona as well. Do you think that's going to encourage more EUcentric, or is it going to be less EUcentric? Because obviously some of the ones in America, South America.
Yeah.
Or is it just going to put more into Europe because you got your Belgrade, you got your Bucharest, you got your Barcelona as well? Like, what do you think about that one in particular? Like, is it going to be more EUcentric because of it? Or is PGL going to the new places, or even Starladder as well, because we haven't heard from them, or Perfect World, going to really grow the scene outwards by having different tournaments? Or is it just going to be a giant clusterfuck and everyone's just going to go to play in EU anyway because it's closer?
Yeah, I think there's definitely arguments for both scenarios, whether it's just for Europe or if it's for the greater community. Look, it really is going to come down to how the spectators and the community responds to it, because they're what dictates the decision making of these TOs, and making sure that they put up, because that's their role, is to put on a good show and to bring the best talent they can.
Yep.
If bringing the best talent means bringing the best EU teams to wherever in the world and showcasing that wherever that might be, and that has a really good fan experience, that's great. Hopefully that grows the scene that way. Then you've also got, on the contrary, do they want to go and root for teams that we see at like ESIC Challenge in Melbourne, where we have some great Aussie teams come competing, who you're not going to get the same level of play, unfortunately, but you're there cheering for people and it's still going to have some fan engagement. But it's just like, what do they actually want is kind of the big question TOs would be asking at the moment.
Yeah, because overall, I've got to say, like, you got your Sao Paulo and whatnot, as well as obviously Brazil. You got Argentina with Buenos Aires. It begs the question, like, where are the other TOs going to hold their tournaments? And, like, BGL are offering fucking huge money, same as the major as well. Is that gonna convince teams to come to the IM Sydney and whatnot? Because you have the Intel Grand Slam, of why people came here in the first place to try and win this tournament. Like, it's not like they came here because they wanted to. And, or not they wanted to, but, not the best idea, because they don't want to fly fucking 16 hours to Australia and then deal with jet lag the entire time. I talked to Steeko about this, and he says the biggest challenge at ESIC Challenge in Melbourne was just the jet lag.
Yeah, it definitely is.
But, just to finish my point, is that, like, are we going to have the same quality of teams going to Sao Paulo, going to Buenos Aires, and going to these other areas, like, your FaZe Clan, your Spirit, and stuff like that? Or are we going to get, just, the odd top 5 team one off, and that's it? And then it's going to go crowd in Europe.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, positive negatives for both of those. And I don't know if I speak for everyone, but I know you obviously bring up prize pools and that kind of thing, but it's definitely not the first thing I think about when it's I know if you're planning it from an org perspective, if you're one of the big dogs,
Yep.
it's definitely something that goes into consideration. forecasting that attend these kind of events. How long is it going to take you to get back to Europe so you can attend these other 3 events and that kind of thing. And, looking at that cost benefit analysis and the time it takes. But I think it doesn't really matter the prize pool too much as long as the fans are keeping engagement up and they're getting good viewership and they're attracting sponsors.
Yeah.
I like from a perspective, like I can even tell you how much prize pool's on the major. Like I just watch it because it's got the best teams there, and I think that's what makes a good tournament.
Yeah, that's what I'm meaning here in particular. Like, if it becomes EUcentric, because all the good prize pools are in EU and it can skip tournaments here and there, like, are they going to actually come out of Europe to, play in these tournaments? Like, the only reason why they do it at the moment for, like, IM Sydney and stuff like that is because they're stuck in this Louvre agreement and ESL. With an open circuit, our team's actually going to do that. This is the scary part for me, where it could just become EUcentric because no teams want to fly out to America or Australia or anything like that, because they don't want to, unless they get paid a bit extra on top.
Yeah, I think we have to look at what we're offering as well. From a community, is like, we know that we've got a great crowd when we show up as a community to things all the time, and they know what they're going to get. It's just providing a really good experience, even though there is obviously some negatives from travel perspective, resources allocation, that kind of thing. But I also think if we build up TOs here and show support, they're going to want to invest more in here as well. They're going to bring their sponsors along too.
So what do you like? We've obviously said earlier that obviously prize pools shouldn't really be on alliance, but more about a good experience. Is it different? This is like a probably different question outside of this. How do you monetize esports in particular? Like, is it prize pools and it's purely sponsors which aren't confirmed? But how do you monetize it?
Like, there's a lot of different business models that like you can explore, and I'm glad you mentioned Endpoint earlier, because it's like that's a great example of like they're not focusing too much on or the reliance on the prize pools and what like a major would have to offer, contrary to like a Greyhounds, where we saw like that was the definitive viability for that org was making sure that we made the major so we can continue investing. If not, we can't. And you don't want to, like, obviously there's arguments for both and it worked for them. But yeah, it really depends on what kind of business model they're working off. If you've got the best players and you feel like you can just go out there full tilt and compete and you're going to get guaranteed, like if you looked at a year on year kind of, or 2 years forecasting ahead, you can go, all right, we can set some goals, set some targets for revenue. If we attack these tournaments, we're going to get this much money. With this many tournaments, this much exposure, which should bring in this amount of viewership, this much sales and merch, that kind of thing. It's really relying on results to, bring in fans, spectators, merch. It works backwards.
Yep.
Which is on the contrast opposite of what we're doing. We're trying to build community first. Create an environment where people want to be involved, fan engagement, that kind of thing. Content, and then build up and scale that to invest in the players to get to those tournaments. So it's really 2 different business models that can both work and have worked for both types of teams in the past. But they end up with very similar outcomes. One, I'd argue, is more sustainable than the other, because obviously players move on, they retire. How agile can you be? How forward thinking can you be as an org? And you look at so many different orgs where they are really good strategic thinkers, and you've got like some OG who aren't that good at doing that kind of thing, and now they're left with I don't know if you know any real OG fans.
I've got to say they've completely dropped the ball. I have no idea what they built around Fiku. When I look at that lineup, I'm just like, you have Dexter. You need to keep him. Like, he's your player. And they built around Fiku, and I'm just like, what are you doing? You're just now a feeder team.
Yeah, and I think that's where they come unstuck. They get some good investment from sponsors, and they have some decent results where they're attending good tournaments, and they've even got like partner status with like the Blast and that kind of thing, where they're able to really accelerate if they do have good results their growth. But if they don't, they're almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because there's no real fan base community behind it. No one's going to buy the merch. No one's going to be able to. Content isn't there because they're not performing. There's just not a real foundation to build off. Just because of the lack of management from a business perspective.
Yeah, I go from the talent side now for being EUcentric. I'm gonna say I feel really bad for any talent that's outside of Europe at the moment, because like there's a lot of people in particular, like for myself as talent, that will get jobs purely because in the right location, the right time. I do remember this conversation being had. I believe it was with Ben ages ago when they're advertising a position, but they forgot to leave the fact that you needed to be near Sydney on it. And I already assumed that, okay, because I'd been in the casting game for about 3 or 4 years, and when they asked for a studio gig, it's their ESL studios in Sydney. So I'm just like, I didn't bother because they're not going to fly me out. Because they've got, you can find a lot of casters in Sydney, okay? I think Haz and Flam wanted to go in for it, and then they were told that it was for Sydney only, and then they'd be like, why didn't you say that at the start? And that's what that happened in particular. I mean, it's the same for EU. Like, I tried to apply for a few gigs. I had Fisher DM me to apply for a few tournament spots, and since I work full-time, I couldn't do all of them, and also since some of them were like 3 a.m. in the morning for me, I couldn't do them because I have a full-time job. And the guy basically said, wow, you can't do too much, can you? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm in GMT +8, and I have a full-time job. And it just leads to the point that if you want to go into casting, like you really just have to be in Europe. That's why South Africans are really successful, because they're basically on the same timeline or the same area as EU.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have like Tech Girl, Hayes, Nero Masuki, I think it's Samantha, that are really successful in the EU scene. Like South Africa in particular are very overrepresentative for the players that are in their scene as talent.
Definitely.
Now, I'm not saying they're not good. Okay, I'm not saying they're not good at all before anyone comes after me, because I think Tech Girl's amazing. Tech Girl's one of the best hosts I've seen, and Hayes with Trav was a really good duo at DreamHack Winter, despite the fact they weren't there because they were in Stockholm. But anyways, if you don't know that one, if you guys are like going, oh wait, the casters aren't at DreamHack Winter, yes, they are not. They're in Stockholm. They're not in fucking geoshipping. But anyway, so yeah, stuff like that as well, and I think Mac just met the reality of it. Like, he can only do so much from Australia, and ESL's not going to fly him out from Australia to Malta every single event. So it's better for him to just be in Malta and already be there, so they don't have to pay for anything in particular. So I think he played that card, and also the fact he's been on ESL Pro League before really enhances his opportunities. And also he got to Alyssa as well, which I believe as well with Neokai. And it's just like sitting there at this point being like, mate, why don't you just move to Europe? You can cast all the tournaments to your heart's content. You've got a surplus of tournaments. You've got probably better than some of the casters that cast some of these events. Someone actually DM'd me, by the way, on Twitter and be like, how come you're not casting any of these EU events? You would be like 100 times better than any of their casters on there. Now, someone's going to go, why are you comparing casters of each other? It's just like, I'm just saying things in particular where, like, someone has told me that I am a lot better than a lot of different casters. And that, go for these lower tier events. And I'm just like saying like, oh, I just can't cast it because I have a full-time job and I'm not in the right time zone.
Yeah, definitely makes things tricky. And, playing into that EUcentric thing, I think, I don't know if there's any bias, towards that, like, consciously, but I definitely think that, like, they want to see their own, as much as we do want to see our own scene succeed, they probably feel the same way about the way that their ecosystem works, especially if, like, they've got, like, TO, like maybe a smaller one that puts on great events, like online events or something like that, and they are able to bring someone, from their region or something like that. I think that they probably hold some form of bias. Not saying that they don't deserve any opportunities or anything like that, but it's just the name of the game, right? It's always been in every aspect. So
it's been like,
as you said, right place, right time.
Yeah, basically, right. It's basically been location. And Elvish has done this in particularly with like Asia as well. Like, he just masters that Asia region, AE region in particular, and also not to mention that AE region. You can't be just at one game. Like, for me in particular, I'm trying to go into different games, but I'm just getting no opportunities whatsoever. And obviously the other casters who are doing the same thing, they're getting those opportunities over me. Basically because they're over the East Coast and they know a lot more people. I think it's with Rect. I don't know anyone in ranked. And a lot of the other
Yeah.
casters on the East Coast, I think Panic's from Queensland or something like that. I forget where he's from. And basically, a lot of those casters over there know each other and they get into these events. And with Asia in particular, I don't talk to them too much. I am friends with all the guys from Challenger mode, so if they do anything, I'm already first person to rank. But overall, it's just like a lot of these casters have to cast multiple regions or multiple games. And AU especially, it's multiple games where like Elvish has to cast like 5 or 6 different games. I think Conky cast 2 different games. Mac had hosted and casted 3 different games at one point. Pilski's done 2 games as well. And I think Xenix does 2 games as well. He does Rainbow Six and CS. And there's a few people in particular as well I recognize from different things. Like in AU in particular, you just can't cast one game. It's not sustainable because you don't have multiple events. Now, I gotta say, I probably may disagree because with myself, because you got Matsy, 2-tap, and no, it is Matsy casting to like 5 a.m. in the morning on the UCast in particular. And I feel like with talent in particular, I think at this point, it's getting to the point now that if any of the leagues show signs of failing, you might as well just start moving to Europe and just packing your bags and getting into Europe, and also starting to cast the EU scene. I know a lot of AU players and AU casters avoid casting the EU scene. I know Flam casts it because Flam knows a lot of the CIS teams, and a few others. You're gonna have to start casting the EU players because that's where you're eventually gonna go if your career gets anywhere.
Yeah, and I think being able to be dynamic and pivoting early, like I think Max timed it pretty perfectly in terms of his opportunities lined up with EPL and that kind of thing, and he'll probably have some good momentum off the back of that. While the stock's high, that's for sure. So yeah, I think you're definitely on the right track there. With you just have to take every opportunity as it comes in our region, and whether that's going across multiple games or if that's having a real schedule, like you've mentioned some other people that have, which unfortunately I haven't been able to watch any of those games because I'm in your position as well. But yeah, like it just have to be dynamic in that respect, and sometimes it's just something you might not be willing or open to be doing, even if you are wanting to pursue career in commentary and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I got to. This is why I'm pretty much retiring. Is that first of all, I'm getting nothing, and like getting no gigs whatsoever other than close qualies. I think nothing's a bit overstatement. I do get the close qualies always, and that's been through my contacts in Europe, and I've always disclosed that I have contacts in Europe from going to DreamHack Winter and whatnot. I had some guy try to tell me on Twitter that I don't work hard for it, and I'm like, I am going to fucking rail you with all my fucking experience, because I felt that way that day, felt a bit violent, feel a bit fucking, I'll go fucking ham on you. But anyways, like there's stuff like that. Like if you don't get anything here and they're flying people from NA and EU, it's just like, what the fuck are you even doing? And you're not even considering that conversation. It's just like, bro, you've been doing this for 5 years and no one fucking is giving you a shot. Might as well quit. And the second one is that I can't really reposition myself to Europe because I got a full-time job that earns more money and has potential to earn more money than a career in commentary. Like, it's not worth the risk in my sort of perspective as a financial advisor. Sure. And none of my qualifications carry over to Europe, where I can work as a financial advisor in Europe. So that's the other case as well. And this is what, Flam and a few others particularly, where they don't have like full careers and stuff like that ready yet, is that they can make that pivot at any spot. Now, I get worried about the other casters who are here, other than Elvish, of course, is that how can you guys make that pivot? Because they get into the 30s. I think every single caster that gets the league gigs, other than Komodo, is over 30. And it's like...
Yeah, it makes things a little bit difficult.
It's that pathway. It's like, you got to have a career already, or career building. Otherwise, it's like, you're already almost halfway through your work life and you don't have a stable career.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rough reality, but it's something that I think so many people like yourself have had to come to terms with, that look at it from a holistic view. It's just not going to be sustainable or achievable in the amount of time that you might think you have, or is a perceived timeline that you think is acceptable for pursuing something like that, before it actually really shows results, where it's, as I said, stable revenue stream for you. But yeah, I definitely think if we keep building up what we're doing here, there should be some more opportunities presented. if you look on Twitch right now, you'll see a few tournaments on. You see a multitude of casters. And that's all EUcentric, relating back to our topic. But hopefully, we're able to introduce some of that stuff where there is going to be those differentiating levels of CS, in particular. That there'll be more opportunities presented for oceanic-based casters.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I've had this thing said a lot, just grow the grassroots scene overall, and basically everything will come with it. I basically looked at it in particular for myself, and I've got to say, like, is 2 to 3 years going to matter for myself in particular? Otherwise, should I move to Europe? I think when I saw a lot of behavior, I don't want to say behavior change, but I saw a lot of the AU casters, like the top tiers, start to focus on EU a bit. I think I saw the bit of the writing on the wall is that I feel like a lot of casts in particular are going to start moving over to that EUcentric sort of thing, where they're actually going to focus on the European CS and then ACS a lot more. And I've seen a lot less light shown on the AU scene, like they're trying to just creep into EU. And I'm thinking overall, like this is where I'm getting a bit negative. I'm getting worried about. I think the AU League should be renewed for another year, but I still got that lingering worry because the AU League gets renewed in December. And I think you've got to give a big effort to a lot of teams who are trying to keep it together and make sure teams don't force forfeit or, die or anything like that in particular. If you look at the South American region, if you want to see the amount of forfeits in there, you can see that. And I will point that out if they don't renew it, because I'll be like, you're keeping the South American scene alive and half of the fucking matches are forfeits. But,
yeah.
But, I get a bit worried at times in particular when I see, like, a lot of the AU talent leaning over to EU, and I'm just like, ooh, like, what's happening? But anyway, as in like the top talent to get all the AU gigs essentially as well. And also, not to mention as well, is the AU gigs in particular for both Valorant and the AU scene is getting diminished as well, given that the ESL ANZ is gone and now run by Europe again. And also the Valorant scene is very small as well. And in fact, I think that the deal with, I think it was like 6 or 8 casters and like 12 games between those two. So the opportunities are getting few and far between. And the model that in Maniac put in, which is Joshin-Strike, of course, was that they want to have a caster that can cover multiple games. That is starting to diminish as well, because if you've got less opportunities and less games to cast, it means that, you have to have less cast because not all of them can sustain a career. And that's why I'm feeling that some of them leaning to going to Europe is because they're not going to be the casters there at the end when they have to diminish it further, and that's going to cascade into a point where there's like only like 4 AE casters and there's like 20 million fucking people going for it.
Yeah. Well, how do you, like, if I put something back on you, right? How do you think ESL in particular, if they are, raising concerns and questions about the viability of the Oceanic Premier Division?
Yep.
How do you think they fix sustainability if they've got some issues in terms of monetary gain from it or exposure?
Like I said, the big thing is they probably look at the metrics at the end of the day. For them to fix it for sustainability in particular, I think they're already operating at that. And overall, I think what they've got at the moment is probably the definition of sustainability. The product overall I would say is the best, given BO2s are not very good compared to a BO3, which is what a lot of people want. And it doesn't give Australian teams a lot of practice. But overall, like with your question, sustainability, I'll answer that one. Like, I don't see it from ESL, like it's from ESLs in particular. Like a lot of the revenues made in Europe and NA, and their budgets from there, not much of the budget is from the ANZ scene. So they can chop that off and focus more on the NA and EU and probably get more of a financial benefit from it.
Yeah.
And also, not to mention, the counter argument to that is that they're the only TO in Australia that's, decent. Okay, because the other TOs, they're inconsistent or they're very unsustainable and can't hold a league like ESL. I'm very confident. Like it's only a nagging fear that they don't renew it. I'm very confident they'll be renewed. I've made sure to get casters on every game as I can, and help out casters who are struggling with stuff in particular to get them on games, and being like, hey, you can do it here and stuff like that. Trying to ask people to do stuff for free is very difficult, and it's very hard because everyone wants to get paid and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, my kind of revenues, my kind of quote is this: like, if you're not doing it for free and you have to have a check presented in front of you, it's the wrong way to look at it, because you have to work for your
Definitely.
money, not give me $150 and I'll do it. It's you have to build the content and build the brand before you can start asking that check. And that's what I kind of view it
Yeah.
as. That I'm trying to prepare for that, to try to build that, to try and earn that from that way. It's more of a bottom up approach. I know some people got top down and stuff like that. They've got good points as well. I can understand it. But that's not my approach to it. And I don't think I've answered your question, but the sustainability part, it's going to lie in the metrics, the ad revenue that they get, because they're not monetizing the cast, like as in like, you know, getting people to pay like $5 for a subscription to all the games, anything like that. It's just a tie-in of the overall monetization of esports needs to change, where the fans have to pay to watch games, whether it's subscriber for area, subscriber for international.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's not really, because from a metrics POV, from an ad revenue sort of model for Australia, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and I think they've just got to kind of do some sourcing and some like almost fielding some ideas towards the community and saying, hey, what do you guys want? What is the stimuli that you guys will respond to really kind of grow it? Because, you know, it's great having the league there and it's presenting an opportunity that wouldn't otherwise exist.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't just be about it just having a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It should be about it having a flourishing life and being able to actually present an opportunity where it does have some great ROI returns, like you know, the NA and the EU scene and the way that their community supports that. And you could almost look at the way that it is supported and take some feedback from that and not just rely on subscriptions alone. I think there's definitely some more ways to if that's like a sponsorship point of view, you know, field more AU sponsors to support the local leagues and that kind of thing. It's definitely something they should try and assess at least to try and bring some more growth into our sector.
Yeah. I think overall, like, you know, go cast, you know, good line on the AU scene. The AU scene is really good with like its league and people want to compete, stuff like that. Australia is an abnormally competitive society, given you see as an Olympics, and we're fucking really good compared to other countries which have way more resources and way more fucking money and firepower and population than Australia. And Australia still does very, really well. Because obviously I talked a bit negatively, as I said there, but that's from a financial perspective. But AU overall has, you know, got some great talent, got some great players coming out of it as well. And it's also got some great storylines in particular, and also the crowd, you know, RoF and stuff like that, you know, being absolutely massive. They're creating the story where basically the talent don't have to focus too much on creating a story themselves. Is that the story, the part's already there. They just need to piece them together, which is great. It helps stand out. It helps the crowd have a good time and stuff like that as well. I don't want to paint a negative picture. It's just, you know, AU League's very good. The league is very competitive, which is great. You don't have like two teams beating everyone else. It's just like it can be a brawl other than FlyQuest. And you have a lot of people giving it a go in open. And also you have a lot of the top talent in AU as well as the players coaching the team below them. I want to really highlight Payne in particular because he's coaching above the rest. And also there's probably a few other players helping out as well that, you know, haven't been mentioned yet in particular. It's just the one that Payne coaches is mentioned because, of course, they upset fucking KCG with it.
Yeah, exactly. And credit's due. Like I think they're showing their commitment because I've been watching them a little bit as well, and showing to the other players in the region who do have similar aspirations that these opportunities do exist. The right people involved, and, you know, great things can happen. Which is hopefully like what we can continue to do as a scene in general. I think for ESL in particular and the way that they're wanting to conduct their business here, I think they just need to have a bit more of a model, like look at their model and assess whether it's the right fit for AU rather than what's the right fit for EU or NA and replicating it. So it just needs to have its own distinct thing, similar to how, you know, ANZ Champs existed in its own light, you know, separate from ECL and whatever was going on in the rest of the world. So I think, like, just assessing that a little bit more and figuring out which way is the best way for it to respond with the community.
I'm gonna say they're gonna do the same thing they do in EU. They're gonna give NA a BO freeze. They're gonna give South America BO freeze. They're gonna give Asia League BO freeze, and they're gonna give Australia BO freeze. Basically, EU is the only league for ECL that has BO freeze, and they just need to give it back to everyone.
Exactly.
I don't mind that if I miss out on casting BO freeze like I did previously, because they'll BO freeze and start an hour earlier. If there's AU teams get BO free practice, it's good for everyone.
Exactly.
Like, for example, like when ESL and Z initially took the coverage, it was to my detriment because I was casting a lot of those community games, but also at the same time I was happy because it means every single game got studio casted. And so I was happy about that, but also I was unhappy with the fact I didn't get to cast any Premier games. I was just casting ANZ main all the time. And that's why I was secretly happy, of course, when they went back to EU, because it means I got to cast more games again. But at the same time, I was also disappointed that not every game would be studio casted. But at least we got one in particular that was studio casted, which is every week by a mixture of casters in particular, which is great. But that's from a talent standpoint in particular, like the downfalls and the upfalls in particular of like casting. But I think it's better overall, like if every fucking ECL actually has the same BO freeze. Otherwise, it's like the scenes that are struggling.
Not ECL.
The scenes that are struggling, which is not EU, is we'll never get that BO free practice. And then when you go to a tournament like ESL Pro League, where you have to play BO freeze and they lose, fucking every cunt in HLTV comments being like, hey, why do we invite Australian teams? Because they don't even make it past the first round. And it's just like, oh, shut up. Like,
Yeah.
And
you got to reward them with something.
Yeah, like, I think the BO freeze need to come back. And that's pretty much it. And I gotta say, overall, like, we've got a really competitive structure here. If Rooster can test talent like that, and house bets get Omachella and APOC done together, or maybe just pick up Pain or DPR, even got Mind Freak as well, you're going to see some very high level CS in particular, and you're going to see some equivalent to EU tier 2.
Yeah, there's definitely some good players, and they just need the exposure to that environment, that ecosystem. And I think we'll see better results. And I think, going back to what I was saying with developing that talent pool and that kind of thing, and how our responsibility lies on the orgs almost creating a grassroots development pathway. I think ESL themselves have a definitive role to play in that. Because I'm not sure what your perspective is on things, but I don't think they do enough advertising and bringing the product to the actual customer that well. You kind of have to be actively searching for it for you to find it. I think that's a real downfall of it. And they really need to organize, something like that where they can bring what they have to offer, which is a great product at the end of the day, to more viewers and have more exposure that way.
Yeah.
Because you look at the amount of people who do follow the different regions who aren't actually don't even play CS or don't even have anything to do with things, but here it's a very concentrated viewer experience where everyone knows everyone almost, which is great because you have a great community behind it. But there's no real casual audience.
Yeah, it sounds like advertising beyond the people involved with the game.
Exactly right. Like the people that are watching the games, the people that play almost in all those games, who would be on the next game or whatever. Which is it's great to have such a tight-knit community, but in order for us to scale as well, and rather than just operate on a minimum viable product for ECL, there definitely needs to be some talks about how they can scale it up.
Anyway, so I think we're going to wrap that one up today, because I think we've talked about that for a bit. And yeah, I guess overall, it's been a good chat overall, the EUcentric and stuff like that, and also about ESIC. And yeah, it's good to have you on. Good to learn about more stuff about you as well. Like, what's one thing in particular you want to say to people, to supporting Vantage or get involved with Vantage over other orgs?
When you say get involved, you mean like on a hands-on perspective, or just like a viewer?
Both, as a fan or as a person to help out here and there to manage players or anything like that.
Yeah, look, open door policy with me. If you do have ideas, you have anything that you wanted to bring to me, if you do have a team that us have a look at, aspiring player, and you want to get picked up, have a chat. If you're a sponsor, reach out. There's so many different levels to it as well. And there's so many people that are in the community who have great thoughts and great ideas, which I'd love to get to know on a deeper level as well. So if you do have anything, feel free to just reach out, either by Twitter, Discord, just at Hoackz. Yeah.
Yep, and I think what's your Twitter is at Hoackz AU, and your Twitch is Twitch TV Hoackz, right? So HOACKS AU is your Twitter. Z. Oh, it's Z. That's right.
Z.
Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna just post in chat, okay? I'll post on my YouTube link as well. But it's HOACKZ AU is on Twitter, and on Twitch it is Hoackz. Same spelling, no AU.
Yeah. Discord is the same. Either one of those, I'm pretty active. So yeah, if anyone has any opportunities they want to bring forward, happy to have a chat. And talking about like casters and that kind of stuff, we brought in Onipotence, which he made a great debut for the academy team. So he's going to be looking after all of our games for the foreseeable future. So I'm really excited about that and what he has to offer. And going back to more so on our conversation, just bringing more opportunities for so many people. So I want to give those opportunities to people in the region who want it, and they are out there for people who are keen. So keep doing good things.
Okay, no worries. Thanks for being on, man. See you guys later, and see you guys later in chat.
See you guys.